Okay, good morning, everybody. Fergus Dolan here from NALA. You're very welcome to our webinar this morning on looking at elements of Irish culture with ESOL learners. We're delighted to have Eleanor, Neff and Jane Brennan to facilitate this morning. So over to you, Eleanor, and all the best.
Thanks very much, Fergus. So good morning, everyone. So I suppose Jane and myself, we met originally. We were both working on a refugee resettlement program, and I suppose we found ourselves at this intersection for learners who were beginning a new life in Ireland and leaving their old life. And I suppose, as well as English language, helping with cultural integration was a really important part of that role, as I'm sure it is for you in your ESOL classes, and it's something you would be familiar with. We found people were really keen to learn about the culture of their new country and become immersed in Irish life. And it was also really helpful for people to establish links and connections between their own culture and Irish culture. And it just enabled people to feel a bit more settled and more at home. And then away from the refugee resettlement program, I suppose on the flip side of that, quite often in other ESOL groups, I found myself working with learners who lived in Ireland maybe 10, 15 years and knew very little about Irish culture. So as well as having the wall of language, there was this cultural wall as well. And they tended to stay involved with their own communities without making a connection with many Irish people. I'll never forget, one learner said to me, "I feel there's a wall between me and Irish people." And I thought that was profoundly sad, because she had been living here for nearly 15 years with children in school and everything. So yeah, language was an issue, but the lack of cultural integration too. And the same learner was really interested in an opportunity to start learning about Irish culture, and again started seeing links between Irish culture and her own culture. The same lady was an artist, and she started to feel more confident. She started to talk to people more. For me, a great moment was when she went to a parent-teacher meeting without someone to translate for her, because she felt more confident about the Irish education system and knew what was happening. And her children were in secondary school at the time. And she's actually now working away, and she nearly has a Kerry accent. So, you know, I think the cultural side of things is so important. You know, I know you're aware yourselves. When we were going to deliver this webinar, when we were planning it initially, we were going to bring in about 5 or 6 aspects of Irish culture. But when we started looking at the material we had, there was actually quite a lot there on even just the music and the poetry, and they seemed to just mesh together nicely. So I'm going to focus on the music section, and then Jane's going to focus on the poetry. After the presentation, as Fergus said, so we should be 35, 40 minutes. We're going to give you a chance to go into a breakout room to maybe discuss other aspects of Irish culture that you might have taught in class, resources that have worked for you. I suppose ESOL tutors and literacy tutors, we can work in isolation from our peers a lot, but I feel COVID has taken that to the extreme. So we felt the breakout room and that chance to network and just exchange ideas is a really important part of today as well, just to give people the opportunity. Jane, will I start on the music, or is there anything you want to add to that before we start the presentation?
No, that's fantastic, Eleanor. Thank you. No, work away and I'll join in later. Thanks.
Okay. So now the Irish music, it can be adapted for any level. And I always try and bring songs into ESOL classes. I think people respond really well to it. And I just have found over the years that people were specifically interested in Irish music and songs. And it also gives people a chance to talk about music from their own culture. So some starter activities, even if you were with a beginner group, you could brainstorm music vocabulary. And there's actually quite a lot of little videos on YouTube about that as well. Things like live music, concerts, all that. Discussions. Now, I would have done this, I suppose, more with very strong A1s or A2 level 2 groups. But what does the group already know about Irish music? Have they ever heard Irish traditional music played? Obviously not in the last year, unfortunately, but in normal times. And of course, do they know any Irish bands or musicians? And U2 springs to mind there, of course. Now, I suppose I would always bring in a focus on the traditional music. And this is just a very small, simple video that I put together about the Irish music instruments. And I did this using Adobe Spark. So it's actually very easy to use. I'm not techie. So I'll just show it to you there if I can play a little bit. Some Irish traditional music instruments. We have the harp, which is also a symbol of Ireland. Next. And the tin whistle. So it goes on, just to give you an idea there, and even an idea about Adobe Spark, because I found YouTube, the things about Irish traditional music, the instruments, they were quite complicated, but it's a handy little tool anyway. So just to show you that. So we'll try and click on there. Sorry, I'll click back. This is a great a piece of trad music, Toss the Feathers by the Chorus. It is so lively. Everyone enjoys it. I've used it with beginner groups, and you can do things about I like, I don't like, even basic adjectives. I won't play any of it now because this video just seems to have a habit of playing ads first when I've tried to do a trial run on it. But it's a great piece of music, very lively, and it really brings a nice energy into the room. And then just activities around it, as I said, reactions to the music. Traditional music in other countries, that is a great discussion to have. And you can even, start talking about the instruments. You can get people to, screen share instruments from their country, or if you're in a group, you could look them up together on the computer. And also writing some sentences about music in other countries. And just to say, I was able to use this activity as part of a QQI level 2 writing. We used it for the writing piece. Because we based the whole thing around Irish culture, and it worked really well. So moving on there. A song for Ireland, really good. It's really good. It's nice and clear, the pace, everything. I find it really helpful to show the lyrics if I am playing a song. So sorry now, my mouse is going funny. So I'll see if I can play a little bit, but you can see the lyrics up there. Now he's being slow, so oh no, he's playing. No patience.
Walking all the day near tall towers for falcons to their nest.
So you can see it's nice pace, it's nice and slow. And yes, there is some new vocabulary there, but a lot of it's very accessible, and I used it with a level 2 group. They really enjoyed it. They found it, we did some pre-vocab work on that beforehand, but they found it very enjoyable. And if you like, you can also give learners printout of the lyrics as well. But I would say just have the lyrics the first few times that you're listening so the learners can follow it. It's also an idea, we used to have a WhatsApp group, so you could send the video ahead as well of sessions. So now I'll just move on there. And then if you want to have it up on your PowerPoint, the lyrics and things like that. But you can see, I suppose what jumps out to me, there's a lot of things grammar-wise as well. You can do a lot of tense work on this, a lot about the past tense, regular verbs, irregular verbs, places in Ireland. So you have a lot of fun activities there that you can start doing, get people discussing places in Ireland they might have visited. I know I actually used this song. It was part of a class where we looked at beautiful places in Ireland, and we had a whole handout and map around other places to visit and everything. So it worked very well. And there you can just see I have the activities grouped together. Did I forget anything? No, the pre-listening vocab, close test, looking up places, discussing your favorite place in Ireland. Now, also you could write about a favorite place in Ireland. So again, it could be a QQI writing activity, or a favorite place somewhere else. It doesn't have to be Ireland. Again, you can give learners the opportunity, if they want to talk about places that they love from their home country or anything, you'll know what's appropriate for your group. Bono, so you can't really do Irish music without mentioning U2. Now, this is a nice interview from RTE News about his 60th birthday. I will say the vocabulary in this is a little bit more difficult, and they'd want to be a strong enough group. But, again, a lot of you could do the pre-vocab, you can do a lot of listening comprehensions. There's a lot that you can do with this. So I'm not actually sorry. I didn't mean to play Bono. He's just insisting on it there. No, I'll just move on. Yeah, actually discussing famous musicians in different countries, that's a nice activity. So we have Bono, and who would you have in your country that's well known? And again, writing about somebody famous. So there's a lot you can do with Bono. And of course, Only to Be With You by U2. Just to say, there's a lot of free activities based around U2 songs on the internet, specifically for ESOL. There's a website, we'll share it with you at the end. It's called ESOL Collective. They have a pile of worksheets up just about this song alone, and they're all in Word, so you can download them and adapt them for your own use as well. So very handy. And again, the vocab in this is accessible. And of course, sorry now, it's just trying to play it because I'm hovering on it. What jumped out and what I have used it for actually is the present perfect. Just when I read the lyrics and with my ESOL tutor hat on, I'm just like present perfect. So it's a really good one for that. You know, a few new words and things like that, but you can see with, you know, a confident group, there would be no problem, you know. And again, just some activities, you know, pre-listening, closed test, you know, you can mix and match the sentences. Present perfect tense, I have to say, I love this song for present perfect tense. You know, even if you've covered the present perfect and you just want to reinforce it in a fun way, again, you know, you could bring it into the class. Now, oops, sorry. John Spillane, I've used him with a lot of groups. Really, really lovely music. I find this is a real song of resilience, and it's lovely for the times we're in now. The Dance of the Cherry Trees. And also there's a little bit of speaking at the start, which is nice. So I'll just play that and you get to hear the Cork accent.
Thank you. The wonderful Mr. John Spillane, who hails from the great county of Cork in Ireland. If you haven't heard John before, you're in for a treat. Please welcome here to the Parks Hall.
Thank you. The first song I'd like to sing for you is called The Dance of the Cherry Trees. It's a song in celebration of the springtime of the year. I hope you like it, ladies and gentlemen. I wrote it myself, the whole thing from start to finish.
So it's just a really nice introduction as well. And I just think in the times we're in, it's a lovely song. So there's a lot you could do with that. Now, and you can see just I've the lyrics up here. So yeah, I mean, there's some new, maybe challenging vocabulary like outrageous and all that. But again, so much you can do with this. You've got your present tense, you've got your adverbs of frequency with your hardly, things like that. You could break down, sound out words. So I have used this a lot, and it's always worked really well. And I found learners absolutely loved it. And anytime I use a John Spillane song in a group, people end up singing along. It's really, really nice. So that's Dance of the Cherry Trees. And again, yeah, pre-listening vocabulary, closed test. So yeah, it's really discussing, you know, the spring, discussing the message in the song, writing about the seasons. So again, it lends itself to so many different activities, and I'm sure you'd have lots of ideas that you could use with it as well. So, and I have another John Spillane song here. It's beautiful, Passage West. I would say here, just be careful that it's appropriate for your group. I suppose it's lovely in one way and so relevant because it gets people thinking about decisions to leave home, decisions to start life in a different country and journeys, and that's lovely. It also opens up a discussion on the Irish famine, which we found, both Jane and myself, worked really well in the refugee resettlement program because it highlighted the whole thing about Irish people needing to move and getting help, and it created just this link again, and also I suppose showed that, you know, there was a lot of empathy in Ireland in that. But again, you know, I suppose if you're working with people maybe who are very recently here, that it's not a trigger, or if people are, you know, traumatized. So I just would have to mention that. But it is an absolutely beautiful song. So I'll play a little bit if I can get my mouse to behave. Sorry. Yeah. I have patience now, it will play.
The sun was sinking down to rest. The river to the stars confessed was the darkest woman I loved.
Can hear it's very clear and everything, and a nice slow pace again, so it works really, really well for listening activities. Sorry now, and just move on. And you can see the lyrics there, and of course, if you've got your grammar hat on, you've got your past tense there as well. It's perfect for that. And that's what I would have used it for with the group. But I used this with a group from Iraq, and it was actually beautiful. Like, they were singing and everything, and it led just into a week of lessons and activities about the famine and things like that. And it was really, really interesting. So, and there are just the activities there. You can see the pre-listening vocabulary, of course, and discussing journeys if appropriate, reading about the Irish famine, past tense, things like that. So and again, I'm sure you have loads of ideas there of things you could do with it as well. Now, that is actually me done. So I'm handing over to Jane now to do the poetry.
Thanks, Eleanor. Thanks very much. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about how you might use some different styles of Irish poems in your ESOL classes. I think poetry is a really rich source of language, and also a really rich source of cultural information. It's really authentic, and like music, is really engaging. And there's also a really strong Irish poetic tradition, which makes a great link to poetic traditions in students' own cultures and countries. I think poetry is perhaps underused in ESOL because sometimes people may perceive that the vocabulary is too challenging, or there's kind of ambiguity in the meaning. But I think if you select your poem carefully and you plan your activities well, it can be a really, really motivating way into language and culture, and of course art and everything as well. In selecting a poem, I wouldn't be that concerned about the vocabulary, because you can always teach vocabulary. I think the bigger thing to look at maybe is the theme of the poem. There are a lot of poems with really lovely themes that we'll look at today. Some of them, though, like Eleanor was saying about the Passage West, don't pick a poem with a theme that's potentially traumatic for your group. And I'm thinking, for example, Seamus Heaney's Midterm Break. Everyone did it at school. It's a lovely poem, it's very beautiful, but I would not go near that with a barge pole with an ESOL group. So I'd just be really cautious and think carefully about the themes when you're choosing your poems. So would you like to move on to the next one? Okay, so this is a word cloud that I've made out of a very well-known Irish poem. Can anybody identify it? In the chat box, if you like. Okay, do you want to move on there, Eleanor? You might have got this anyway, but it's hard to typing. It's the Song of Wandering Angus. Yeah, that's right, Mary. Well done. Brilliant. You were on the ball there. Yeah, so the Song of Wandering Angus by W.B. Yeats. If you don't know it, it's a lovely poem. It's themes of kind of mystery, magic, beauty, nature. And there's a simple story that runs through it as well, with lovely kind of imagery. I'd say you could tackle this with any class of kind of a good intermediate or above. So ways that you might approach a poem like this. I think it's really important that you treat a poem as a poem and not as a kind of language learning tool. It is a piece of art. So I would begin by pre-teaching the vocabulary. And I find the word clouds are brilliant for that. You can give the group a word cloud, have them look up the words, find the ones that they don't understand, and then you can have them predict the story of the poem. So when they actually come to deal with the poem itself, they're prepared and they're not really struggling with the vocab. At that stage, as I say, I think it's really important to treat a poem as a poem, and poems are designed to be read and listened to. So I would have the students maybe listen while you read it aloud, and maybe to do that a few times before you move on and look more in detail. And yeah, you can spread it out like this on, you know, if you're presenting it on screen, but ideally, hopefully we'll be back in the classroom soon and you'll be able to have it on paper. After that, you might do things like retelling the story. You could get into the detail and pick out the nature vocabulary. You could look at rhyming structure as an obvious thing to deal with in a poem. You could have the students read it aloud, or you could even have them learn off and recite a verse. Now that sounds strange, maybe. I rarely have students learn things off in class, but with poetry, I think it's a really appropriate thing to do. I did German for only 2 years at school, and we had a rather eccentric teacher who had us learn off and recite a couple of Goethe poems. Now, I would be pushed to order a coffee in German these days, but I still have those 2 poems, and I actually value that. And I think it's something really lovely that you can give to your students to learn a bit of. So it may or may not be appropriate. You could also research Yeats. Who was he and why was he important? And then link maybe with poems about nature or magic or love in the students' own countries and cultures. And I know the Arab students that I was teaching recently, there's a very strong poetic tradition in Arabic, and these themes are very strong. So, you know, have people share poems in their own languages after you've looked at that poem. Okay.
Jane, there's a nice comment from Mary McDermott saying she's used the Wandering poem, the Yeats poem. Michael Gambon does a lovely reading of it on YouTube.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I hadn't come across that, but that's brilliant. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it's great. Great to hear somebody's used it already. That's great. I'll look up that video. Thank you, Fergus. And thank you, Mary. Okay, completely different now. This is a more modern poem by a Kerry poet called Eileen Sheehan, who's still writing in County Kerry, and the poem is called Playing Shops. These are a few questions that you might use to introduce it. Did you ever play shops when you were young? What did you use? Who did you play with? Did boys and girls play together or separately? And were there ever rows or fights between boys and girls? So you can see already before you even go near the poem, that's a really nice, rich discussion. The poem is from a book called The Narrow Way of Souls. That's it. Thanks, Eleanor. And yeah, if you go to the next one now, I'm actually going to read this one out to you just to give you a sense of it. So Playing Shops by Eileen Sheehan. The lean-to shed with the clunky door and the grey felt roof was where the 2 girls set up shop. They filled empty packets from the kitchen with sand, turf dust and stones, adding extra weight to the game. They built shelves from old boards and fruit crates, arranged the merchandise in neat rows with the labels facing out. Their endeavour prompted by a plastic till they had found. When you pressed the blue button, it made a dinging sound and the drawer shot open. The boys refused to play at being customers, mocked such a silly game, ran off up the field playing cops and robbers with sticks for guns. The shopkeepers begged an old scale from their mother. With a white scoop and a plastic bowl, they weighed things up, weighed things out. When they went home for tea, the robbers came and slashed the packets, shot the boxes open, pilfered the brown pennies from the till. Working in quiet unison, the 2 girls dumped what was unfixable, saved what could be saved, nailed a new sign on the clunky door, open for business. So I think you can see there's a lovely story there, and very kind of relatable probably to people from any culture or country or culture. Things that you might do with that poem. Do you want to go to the next one?
Sorry, I just pressed the wrong button.
That's all right. So again, treat a poem as a poem. So give plenty of time to you can pre-teach vocabulary if you feel that's necessary, but that's pretty accessible, I think. So you might just read it and have your students follow. They could read it aloud. They could retell the story. Leads on to discussion of children's play and gender relations. If you want to go into detail, you can pick out shop vocabulary, and I suppose that's probably an old-fashioned shop. Compare old-fashioned shops with shops now, that kind of thing. If you want to get into grammar, you could pull out past simple, but it'd lead really well into a writing piece about maybe playing from your own childhood. What kinds of games did you play? And in my experience of groups, that's a very, very rich source of storytelling. Okay, next. Okay, yeah, the next few slides, you might run through them until I'll tell you stop. One more. Okay, hopefully, too late. No, it's all right. I was going to get you to guess what poem they were all related to, but never mind, you've got it now. This is Digging by Seamus Heaney. Again, this is a really lovely poem, and if you don't know it, it talks about the poet's father and grandfather and the physical work they used to do, digging potatoes and digging turf, and it compares that with his work as a writer. The photos are what I've used to introduce the poem in the past, and I suppose this poem, the vocabulary and even the concepts are possibly very new to people, so you would want to spend a good bit of time introducing those. And I found those photos, or you can even find videos, a great way to introduce it. You don't have to necessarily have them understand every word, but just to have an idea of what they're going to be listening to. So then you might do the same kinds of things. Yeah, you could start by researching Seamus Heaney. I know classes in the past that I've had it's actually been really important to them that Seamus Heaney had the Nobel Prize, so they felt that was an important thing for them to be learning one of our great poets. So you could research Heaney. I would definitely prepare the vocabulary and the concepts, as I said, using pictures or videos or whatever. You could talk about potato growing. That's international, I suppose, traditional rural lifestyles and change between generations. They're very rich themes there. For the listen and follow, you could read it yourself, or there's a YouTube video of Heaney himself reading it if you want to use that. And again, you may want to have the students read it aloud themselves. Other things you can do, the poem's full of sensory information about the feel and the smell and the sounds of these physical activities. So you could pick out those kind of phrases. Talk about the feelings. How does he feel about his father and his grandfather? And then get on to, talk about intergenerational stuff, fathers, sons, grandfathers, mothers, daughters, granddaughters. And you could lead on possibly even to talking about a parent or grandparent doing some kind of work, no matter what work that might be. Okay, on we go. Okay, poetry doesn't have to be super literary, however. And here is another Kerry poet, Gabriel Rosenstock. And this is a book he's written for the young and the young at heart. And it is full of dozens and dozens of verses like the following. Okay, I met a man from Ballinamuck. All he had in the world was a duck. One night it drowned. What luck, rotten luck, that duckless man from Ballinamuck. And so it goes on for pages and pages and pages. They're a bit like a limerick, but not exactly. But you can see, you could have a lot of fun with that. Yeah, go on, next one, yeah. So you could start by looking up the place names. Are they real? Where are they? Rhyming words is the obvious thing to look at with that, families of words that rhyme. And also syllables and rhythms. These are very nice and easy to read out and to get the rhythm and the intonation there. Obviously vocabulary work, read more verses, and it'd be very easy to write another poem in the same pattern as the ones that you've read. So that's change of tone. And yeah, another change of tone now, you don't have to go back to Yeats and Heaney. It doesn't have to be the very famous poets. Spoken word poetry is really huge in the moment, especially in Dublin. And this is one that I thought might be quite nice for a class. This is a young woman called Natalia O'Flaherty, and a poem called Not Like the Other Girls. You might give us a very short clip there, Eleanor.
I never liked pink or glitter or bows. Instead, I chose blue and dirt and digging. Never liked lipsticks or perfumes. Never hung horse-themed posters in my bedrooms. Assumed I was not like the other girls, and the other girls were not like me. I shied away from my femininity, maximized my masculinity so that the boys wouldn't pick me and laugh and team chasing, bracing myself on my back with my football boots.
Okay, she's fantastic. Yeah. So the poem is obviously about being not like the other girls. I noticed that the sound maybe is a bit difficult. I think sometimes if you're teaching online, it might be better to get your students to watch it directly on YouTube rather than through the call. You might get a better sound that way. But anyway, things that you might do with this, you've got gender roles and teenagers, conforming and not conforming. Rhyming is obviously huge in spoken word poetry. You could research spoken word poetry. And again, that's something that there's likely to be a tradition of in the learners' own countries. It's an oral form, so it's not in writing. So you could use it as a dictation, play a short section and have students try and write it down. Eleanor was talking about the Cork accent earlier. You've got the Dublin accent here coming through very strongly to talk about. And you could write and possibly even perform a piece on the students' own teenage years or else gender roles. Loads to talk about there. So we're nearly finished. There's just one more, I think.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I think this one is by Imelda May, and it's probably better to listen to it yourselves rather than try and play it here. But it's a poem about living through the pandemic. So it's very, very here and now, very relevant. And again, it's a kind of spoken word piece. Yeah, on we go. Yeah, again, she's lovely Dublin accent there. Look at the vocabulary. The poem's all in imperatives, so it's watch, wait, breathe. You could talk about that. But obviously the big thing is talking about lockdown and how people experienced it. So either in discussion, or you could lead on to a written piece then about how you got on in lockdown, what you liked and what you didn't like. Okay, that's, I think, the end of what I had to say on poetry, but I hope I've just given you a sense of kind of the diversity of the kind of material that you might be able to find, and hopefully others of you, I see things coming up in the chat, I can't read and listen and talk at the same time, but I want to go back to that. Hopefully during the breakout you'll be able to make a note of things that you've used yourselves that you've found useful, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've done, but there's so much out there. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have a try at some of those things. So back to Eleanor.
And really, we've just put together a few websites that we've both used at different times and found useful. I think both of us have used Ask About Ireland, just to make our own worksheets and adapting things from that. A new one, Listen Here, it was actually Joan, I think, who put me on to this. It's good for hearing the Irish accent, and there's listening pieces, and it's free. People can sign up to it. That one here, the ESOL, I think, collective, I was telling you about the U2 song. You have to wade through things. It's a bit like TK Maxx, but there's actually some useful things on it, and they're all in Word, so you can download and adapt as well. On this one here, I actually found out they were PDFs, but there's a lot of lessons, and they're free, about Irish culture. So Jane, you've used the Poetry Island and a Poem for Ireland as well. So I mean, they're all very, very useful. So I think that's our presentation done. So I'm just going to escape that now, and just what I'm going to do, guys, is just show you the Jamboard link before we go into the breakout rooms. That's up, is it, Jane, my Jamboard?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I suppose firstly, the Jamboard, I've only become familiar with this like since the lockdown. I'm not techie, but I think it's great fun. It actually has virtual sticky notes. So what you do, you click on the sticky note here, up it comes, you can change color. You just type your message into your sticky and you can just press save and it goes up on the board there. And just to say, everyone's messages will appear up on the Jamboard, so you'll see random things appearing. If you don't have space, if it goes very well, you can go on to the next page, but it's a shared board. So that's why we're encouraging people to use it, because everybody's ideas are in one place. But again, don't worry, if someone wants to write things down by hand, that's fine too, whatever works for you. But this is fun, and I've actually I saw it at a webinar myself, and I've ended up using it now in groups and that. So it's a nice little tool, and I'm sure some of you know it. So I suppose what we wanted you to think about in the breakout groups are just, what elements of Irish culture have you taught in your groups? What has worked well for you? What resources have you found useful? So really, it's just to give people the opportunity to exchange ideas and get us talking about how we can weave this into our ESOL classes. So I think that's it now. I'll stop the share and I'll actually get to see people now because I'm only looking at my computer screen. So, okay. Hi, everyone. I can see you now.
Okay, the Jamboard link is in the chat now. So when you go into your rooms, you should have access to that.
Share the Jamboard, or then people can't see. Is everybody back? Because I can just see us now, so I can't see people.
I think they are. I think they're all with us.
I'm going to just actually stop share for a sec. Oh, everybody's back. Sorry, I was just looking at the Jamboard. How are you? So guys, that's great. There's a pile up in the Jamboard. So I suppose, guys, if we could get some feedback, and if we go to breakout group one first.
Eleanor, sorry, can I just, before we go to the group breakout, can we just go maybe through the chat comments?
Oh, perfect. Yes, thank you.
That's something we didn't get to when we were talking. So just a few comments there. Mary mentioned that Michael Gambon reading Wandering Angus on YouTube. That's fantastic. Esther has suggested a post-pandemic trip to the Heaney exhibition in Dublin, which would be fantastic. We didn't know that existed, so we had to Google it during the break. It's in the National Library, apparently.
And Esther, if you want to go further afield, there's a Heaney Centre in, is it Balahi in County Derry, but it'd be a fair trip up for you.
Joan says she's great. I think that was of Natalia Kennedy. And Mary Jo suggests Smiling is Infectious by Spike Milligan. I will go and look that one up right away. So thanks very much for that. Okay, that's it. Thanks very much. So sorry, Eleanor, back to you.
So I'll just share the Jamboard, I suppose, but breakout group one, if you wanted to give some feedback, that would be fantastic. And I'll just briefly share the Jamboard too, so everyone can see it. So breakout one was Anna and Eileen and Mary and Kinga and Zoe. So has anyone volunteered to give feedback for breakout group one?
We never put anything. We were so busy talking. We completely forgot to put anything up on the board.
Mary, sorry, it's Kinga here. I actually did. It's there in yellow, kind of at the bottom of the board.
Oh, all right. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I didn't know
that at all.
So we had a lovely discussion, and we were very lucky to have two girls who have a Polish perspective observing Irish culture. And something that one of the girls said was the difference for her, that they would say in the Polish culture, people can be very direct about things and say things very directly. For her, the Irish culture, the language is very implicit. And she said, we asked her then, did that lead to confrontations? And she said, well, certainly misunderstandings, and that it would have saved her a lot of hardship and heartache over the years if she'd had an induction course in these aspects of Irish culture. Yeah. So I suppose in a restaurant, if you say, I want, maybe she might ask for something, I want. But in Ireland, we would say, I'd love, and we say things, if you don't mind. And that's how we complain on that. And she said, it is confusing because they're more used to a direct thing. So that was a very interesting element to the conversation. She said, and I thought it was very nice, Irish people tend to be very gentle and soft in every aspect of how they do things. The language is, you know,
Yes.
it's not direct and it's not confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
Aspects of Irish culture that we go into: the music, the sport, the literature, and some ideas for music. You know, the big players there, U2 and, you know, Clonard, Bob Geldof even, who has a great song, the great song of Indifference. And it's got all that I don't mind, I don't care. And it's got a lovely Irish rhythm to it as well. And somebody from Westmeath, the group, said Joe Dolan and Brezzy and Niall Horan, and the statue in Mullingar that you can visit. Intercultural, okay. Oh yeah, the other things that we thought was very important, Eurovision, and our European students really connect into that, and river dance and all of that.
Yeah.
Yes, how we might approach things in the classroom. We could do quizzes sort of about Ireland, maybe musical instruments, maybe symbols, the significance of symbols, things like what are the Irish words in the language that we use daily, Taoiseach, Taoiseach and Taoiseach, Uachtaráin, and even little things you could, I do it with my class, see she's the odd time, or Shinné or Shinné, and just small things that they're with, the sports, the GAA. And then one of the teachers, or one of the speakers in the group, mentioned she brings maths into that, you know, in a GA, the capacity, how many people fit in a stadium, or the distance and stuff like that. Yeah, the sport, hurling, GA. Food is another great one to talk about. And then resources, well, Irish TV. Somebody mentioned the Ardal Lohannan and the use of bad language. You know, how we even split words. I'll have a spaghetti ball of bleeding eggs, you know, to put in that, you know, kind of thing. Tommy Tiernan, and, you know, he interviews Rita Ann Higgins, who's from Galway. I was listening to her and she was talking about Michael Higgins as a doting, you know, the diminutives that we use in English language in Galway. I heard a lady in a pub say, Kathleen, would you like a glassine or a pinting loving? You know, and they're all things that you can explore. And then Iarnad in Enda, Nationwide is a very good, nice half hour, goes around Ireland, aspects of Irish culture, the rural museums, the Titanic museums and stuff like that. And just one further thing, I'm conscious of having talked too long. There's a resource that I use. It's called Ronan Kelly's Ireland. He's a journalist. He has 80 short interviews with people from all over Ireland. I would suggest you start with Iris Pivoy in Offaly in Kinnity. She's a shopkeeper. They're darling videos. They've ranging about 6 minutes to 12 minutes. There's loads of Irish language there. The dropping of the you know, I'm looking, all of that. Lots of cultural references and lots of language. Ronan Kelly's Ireland. Okay.
That is so helpful. Thank you. That's just a wealth of stuff. I've all notes here myself. Thanks so much for that, guys.
Okay.
I'll move to breakout 2, so because I'm just watching the time. So anyone from breakout 2, we've Amanda, Joe, Michael, so whoever'd like to chat there.
I'll talk. I got the lovely job of being spokesperson, Eleanor. I thought you putting up the Jamboard again.
I stick it up there now.
Oh, yeah. So we started off with the read aloud option in PDF documents. I don't know if we were just saying if everyone's aware of it, that there's a read aloud option up at the top. But also what's there apart from that is there's a voices option also in the PDF where you can get the accent of the country read out in English.
Oh.
Wow. So it makes it, there'll be an English accent. We use Sean from Ireland all the time, like to read, you know. And then Irish idioms awareness. You know, like you mentioned that already there. Historical figures. I think just Michael mentioned like Daniel O'Connell and all the towns in Ireland, why they're all called O'Connell Street. And even just different historical figures, just to become aware of them. The Irish language then as well was another one. They familiarise, you know, the way the words, that some of the towns in Ireland are in Irish as well as English, and familiarising ourselves, and certain words in like Sloan, for instance, you know, the people sometimes say Sloan, you know, or, you know, Conastatu or stuff like that.
Exactly.
That people say, like, but you don't need to be fluent in Irish.
No.
Like, I'll just tell a very short story about my own daughter's in Germany on Erasmus at the moment, and she's friends with a Turkish student who's fluent in Irish. Because he has better Irish than what she has, and she's from Ireland. So
Right, yeah.
yeah, that's what she said to me. So it's just kind of it's Duolingo. Duolingo is a brilliant app for people to learn the language. It's very, very. Next one was Northern Ireland. Rosalind was saying she's living up near the border, so just being familiar with the different rules and regulations across the border, different currency, different education, and understanding, you know, a bit of the history, I suppose, behind it.
Yeah.
Another one then is let's see, a poem. Then someone suggested a poem by Christy Keneally.
Oh,
Amanda. Another poem then was the Winter Work by Peter Fallon. Festivals, knowledge of St. Patrick's Day. You know when it is, knowledge around it.
Yeah.
And someone else as well mentioned as well about the festival in Clare. I can't remember the name of it now. Again, was it Clare Bow, was it?
Matchmaking festival?
A festival in Clare as well. I don't think I have it written in there now. I thought I had it written in.
Is that the Bachelor? Is the
No, it's
Willie Clancy, maybe?
No, it's just a tradition that you put a bow on the door as May bow in the summer, and to keep away the bad fairies.
Oh yeah.
And just, you know, to be familiar with the local festivals. Someone else suggested setting a task for students to pick an Irish song at home as a at-home exercise to come in and discuss it the next day in class. Pick a song that they like.
That's brilliant. That's great.
And in the last one was Irish phrases, like they vary from town to town.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Just to be familiar, just because you know the slang, it mightn't work throughout the.
Exactly. That's brilliant. No, thank you so much. That was excellent. And last but not least, group 3. So we'd Owen and Esther and whoever would like to volunteer, just as we wrap up. Anyone from group 3?
Okay, I'll go.
Oh,
We probably we had a lot of the things that were already said, so I won't repeat that. But one thing that we spoke about was Irish food, and even the names of the Irish food, and that one could use the recipes and so on to help people learn. And again, the action words at the beginning and so on. And the other thing was that to be kind of thinking in terms of targets and things, if we really want to, you can actually, there's the QQI level 3, I think Irish culture one, and then there that you could very easily align a lot of these as themes for reading, writing, listening, speaking, and all of those. And another thing was we kind of had a bit of a discussion around the word culture, because what is culture and what is the stereotype and what is youth culture or what is urban culture or what is rural culture, and kind of the whole exploring that. I think that's anybody from our group that had that as anything not mentioned, please add, but I think that kind of is the addition that we bring.
Oh no, that's fantastic. Thank you.
I think that's a really important point about not kind of, I think when you talk about culture, it's so easy to get into real stereotypes. And I think it's really important to, like you say, take a broader view of it. And
Could I just mention one thing I forgot to mention as well? I think it was written up there as well, but a Padlet. They're very simple to use, and I'm not into technology now myself. I struggle with it, but this is so simple to use. But there's a map option in Padlet. I don't know if any of you have ever used it, and it's just fabulous for an intercultural class, because if you even go onto YouTube and see how it works, you can use it as an exercise for everyone to pin where they're from in the world and put in a comment about it, and people go back and forth. It's a brilliant, very simple resource to use.
And Mary Jo, I've seen someone using that for a town, so they get a Google picture of the town and they go where they've guard stations, the post office, the school. It's
brilliant. And as I said, I'm not any person to be promoting technology because I'm nearly afraid of it. But this was just so simple to use. If I can use it, anybody can use it. Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, guys, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and just all the sharing and everything was so rich. We really appreciate it. It's been lovely to meet you even briefly, and hopefully in the future it'll be in person. So thank you.
So the Jamboard will continue to be available to everyone, I presume, won't it?
Fergus can send out the link as well. I'll give Fergus the link to the Jamboard and the PowerPoint as well.
Brilliant.
So he'll email that
Thanks
to
very
everyone
Thanks
much.
so
as well.
much. Yeah,
So,
I just see there 1 or 2 points. Street View is good for local landmarks. Thanks. That was from Roisin Hart. And somebody mentioned Terry Dolan's Hiberno English, and Learning English in Ireland, Celtic Publications, a student book. So thanks for that, Roisin Hart, again. So listen, it just leaves me to say thanks very much to Eleanor and Jane, who give a wonderful presentation, really thought about it and prepared it so well, and give fantastic ideas and tips for you. I hope you got some, and that was great. The workshops you came back with a great variety of suggestions and ideas. So it looks like people are doing that in their own way, in different ways at the moment. So I hope you all picked up a few more suggestions for poems or songs or websites, etc., that you can use in your class. So thanks again, Eleanor and Jane.
Before you go, just the plain English.
Oh yeah, thanks a million. So my colleague Sean asked me to advertise. They've got an open plain English training session on Wednesday, the 14th of July. It's in the morning. So if you're interested in that, you can email me and I'll pass on the details. So thanks, Joan. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Eleanor. And thanks everyone for contributing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. I'll send out the presentation to everyone who's registered. And next week we'll have an edited video of this up on the NALI Ireland YouTube channel. So thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Good luck, guys. Bye.
Bye.